This is Voices in Validation, brought to you by IVT Network. IVT Network is your expert source for life science regulatory knowledge. Voices in Validation brings you the best in validation and compliance topics. We interview industry experts from pharma, biotech, med devices, and laboratories. Here is the host of Voices in Validation, Stacy.
Thank you, and welcome to another episode of Voices in Validation, brought to you by the IVT Network. In this episode, we share a session from Validation Week on the topic of data integrity and implementing automation. We are not talking about futuristic concepts here, but rather visionary actions taken now to avoid being left behind. Our speaker, Karen Ginsbury, identifies the primary sources of data integrity lapses and the ways in which automating now can save your business for the future. This episode will also be available on YouTube and through the IVT Network's products page, where you can download the video and follow along with the slides.
Good afternoon, good morning. It's good afternoon where I am. Can you hear me? I suppose so. I'm here to talk about data integrity, but not just data integrity. We talk about that too much. And integrating automation. And if you take a look at the slide, you'll see several does not equal signs. Can we go back to the previous slide, please? Thank you. We see that an HMI, a human machine interface, plus a PLC, a programmable logic controller, and a PC is not equivalent to integrated automation. We tend in the pharmaceutical industry to work in silos. We have different systems for different things. When we talk about integration in society, we also make this mistake of it's not really integration. If you look at the picture there, you'll see a picture of people who use wheelchairs. I have a nephew who uses a wheelchair. He's not integrated if we bring him to the table in a wheelchair. He's integrated if we make a chair that he is able to sit on at the table outside of his wheelchair. So we must think about integrated solutions where things work together. We can go to the next slide. The next slide is the usual consultant's disclaimer. You know that consultants never take responsibility for anything. So don't take any statement that I make during this presentation as intended to be applied as is. You need a company vision and you need change management. The concepts that I'm going to tell you about should not be revolutionary. If you've heard me talk before, you will have heard similar lectures. But in the pharmaceutical industry, we are so conservative so that more than in any other industry, these concepts may be considered revolutionary. There are real risks and threats, particularly cybersecurity, where everything is working through this Internet of Things, which I'll talk about a little bit. And again, the Internet of Things should be your daily bread by now. We should all be completely connected up to it. We just integrated in our home a smart television set, which I didn't want at all. I'm not very fond of television. My husband very much wanted, and we put it at the entrance. However, being a smart television, you can also put a work of art on it. And when our friends come in, they say, wow, what a beautiful new picture. And every time they come in, we've got a different work of art up there. That's the Internet of Things. It's operated through a smartphone. So it's not something that we should be afraid of. But there are risks and threats, which doesn't mean we should avoid them. Let's move on to the next slide. And we're going to think about cognitive disruption. You know, if we want to shake ourselves up, we've got to be a bit philosophical about this. We want to prevent things from happening, bad things from happening. That's what the quality management system is about. And we want the good things to happen. The good things are artificial intelligence and machine learning and big data analysis. Next slide. We don't use big data analytics in our companies. If we think about the primary cause of data integrity lapses, is it deliberate criminal intent? I don't think so. I've been in this industry and working in this industry for a long time. I do not believe that the primary cause of data integrity is deliberate criminal intent. Yes, there are companies that cheat. There are companies which delete data. There are companies which hide data. There are companies which select data. There are pressures. There are reasons behind that. It doesn't excuse it, and I'm not looking to excuse it. What we have to think about is how we can eliminate opportunity coupled with pressure. The next slide, please. The answer to does it matter is that it doesn't matter if we can eliminate the opportunities. So what sort of findings do we see? Incomplete or missing records. This is from a warning letter. One set of data reported, but data processed multiple times. Only a person can do that. A machine can't do it because it's not set up to do it. Injections in a sequence excluded from a data package. How are they excluded from a data package? A person selected them. But if we set up a computerized system and lock it so that it takes all the injections in a sequence, it will not exclude injections. Missing flasks, solutions, microbial test plates for tests supposedly in process. How many of the people who are listening to this lecture and in the pharmaceutical industry use this kind of a scan code, the one on the left-hand side over here, or even a rather more old-fashioned barcode for samples and for labeling flasks and for labeling microbial plates? Well, I think some of the big companies, many of the big companies already do that. But if we have a barcode, and if those were delivered by robots, drones, not something that is a dream, it does happen, all these technologies are available, then the samples couldn't get lost and we couldn't take them out in process because we wouldn't be intervening. Next slide, please. And we'll see deleted or destroyed GMP records, deleted data on electronic records, sample notebooks and test records in the trash, heap of printouts from HPLC on the desk in the lab, but paperless, everything done by barcodes, imprinted blockchain type technology into the records. We won't find anything in the trash. We may find it in the trash on the computer, but again, that would be a person intervening. And if the systems can be made autonomous so that people aren't involved, there is less opportunity and collusion is required. You need more than one person. Next slide, please. Access privileges. So unique users, lack of segregation of duty. Yes, we need to set up the systems correctly. And there's a huge amount of fear because we're a highly regulated industry and we're terrified that our audit trail won't be set up correctly, or it'll show, as we see today, a generic user rather than individual users, or the head of the laboratory is the administrator, or the head of the IT is administrator. And what about data approval? Who approves it and when do they do that? And what about if reintegration of chromatograms is allowed at a basic user level? Next slide, please. So all those things can happen with computerized systems, but much worse things happen with pure paper, if the paper even exists. In other words, we have to think about benefit and loss. And the benefits of paperless systems from the perspective of data integrity, which what I'm telling you to some of you is not news, but to some of you, your companies aren't even planning this. You are still using Excel spreadsheets, which are not Part 11 or Annex 11 compliant. You are still using manual records, and analysts are marching about the laboratories with weight printouts in the pocket of their lab coat or stacked on the desk. That is not data integrity, and that is opportunity, because if at the end of the day, they have a test result which is really close to the specification, but just outside it, if they were to weigh the sample again, and let's say they have access to the date and time on that balance, which is not an impossibility, you can lock it, but it's not an impossibility, and some companies haven't done that. They have the opportunity, if they're in a rush to get out of there, to go and make a new weighing, put that in the notebook with the earlier time on it, which is a criminal act. I'm not advocating it. I'm not, God forbid, saying that it's acceptable behavior. But the opportunity exists, and most crimes arise from opportunity. And what about batch record review? What about when it takes us days, weeks, or more than a month after production to review and release a batch record, during which time we go back to people who forgot to sign off on a step in the manufacturing process, and we say to them, but you didn't sign here. And they say, oh, give me that record, and they sign it. And they backdate it. Can they? They can. Should they? They should not. But the opportunity exists. Whereas, if it's paperless, that record is pushed to supervisory review immediately after that step is performed, or after that chunk of manufacturing is performed. And if the supervisor doesn't approve it within, you can decide, it can be 3 hours, it can be a day, it can be 3 days. But if they haven't done it within 3 days, it will be escalated automatically to their bosses. Why is this not approved? So that there is follow-up and control, and it's much easier when it's paperless. The next slide, please. A call out. I don't usually show company names, but I was looking on the internet to see who uses and advertises. Why shouldn't they advertise that they use paperless? And here is a contract development manufacturing organization who, in my opinion, has earned a call out for forward thinking. It's an important start. It's very far from an overall holistic, integrated, digitized solution, but it's a great start. They have Lonza's Moda EM, paperless QC Micro. And look what they say. One of our core responsibilities, data integrity. I would like to go to a manufacturing organization, a contractor, who says one of our core responsibilities is data integrity. And this platform combines data capture and error prevention. Data capture and error prevention. Isn't that what we're looking for? And it's paperless. So it's not something of the future unless we're not even thinking about it, and we are still doing more of the same and more of the same. Can I have the next slide, please? The primary causes of data integrity are opportunity. And if we want to eliminate that opportunity, we have to say, I'm here at the bottom of the digitized and automated learning curve, and I must reach here. And I need to do it fast. I need fully automated, people-less systems. With full audit trail, I'll invest in design. I'll invest in cybersecurity. I will invest in information technology. I will take the people who are currently sitting and filling out forms, and I will re-educate them to learn how to check if a computerized system design has been correctly implemented. So it's not that we're going to get rid of all these people. We are going to realign them with our goals and with our vision. And I want that full audit trail activated and routinely checked. That beats paper every single time. Can I have the next slide, please? Application development. Do we even think, in the context of our daily work, app, but in our private life, maybe not a daily, some people do it on a daily basis. I certainly don't. I'm not that generation, but some people download apps on their mobile phone day after day after day. Wow, look at this one. Wow, look at this one. Yet in a pharmaceutical environment, we think software, and we speak a different language. Albert Einstein said insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. We have heard about data integrity since the 1990s. Those who've been in industry as long as I have, it started with the Bar Court case. Actually, it started long before then even. It started in 1987 with the generic drug scandal. There's always been cheats. There have always been people who are doing the wrong thing. but they are not the majority. The majority are people making errors, or people under pressure, or people with opportunity. And businesses need to get to grips with speech patterns. Yes, voice recognition, semantics, how to phrase the instructions so that artificial intelligence and machine learning can work on what we're doing, and contextualize development when building traditional systems. Think Annex 11 and 21 CFR Part 11, electronic signatures and electronic records and computerized system validation. Where do we start? We start with a user requirement specification, where we begin with the process and logic, code writing, and then we insert the data. Next slide, please. Whereas in the e-commerce world, application development is based on a cognitive first application development strategy. It is a completely different mindset. It follows a different path. Developers need to lead with the data, being able to gather all of the information in the moment and let it drive them to the logic. This is a 180 degrees turn in our industry. We don't think like that. And we must, if we are to be smart, and I don't mean smart people, I mean smart systems. Next slide, please. Tesla. Let's think Tesla. In 2019, if anybody clicks on this link, you will see that they were about to become bankrupt. Everybody said they're facing a code red, and management is not focused on Model 3. Can we have the next slide, please? You can already see here that on January the 9th of this year, Elon Musk became the richest man in the world. 8 industries being disrupted by him. Focus on the word disruption. We can't keep moving forward at a snail's pace, doing what we did before. We need to disrupt. The next slide, please. This happened, it was announced in the last couple of days. Hertz orders 100,000 Tesla Model 3 vehicles. Tesla topped the $1 trillion value. And that company is leading the future. Hertz deal isn't just the tipping point for Tesla and electric vehicles, but car rentals in climate change era. So if we manage to get out of our trapped mindset, and we are in a trapped mindset, and to manage processes, but from the perspective of capturing data and big data analytics on real time, we must have holistic information technology solutions. We must think of collaborative robots to augment workforces. I can't hear anybody, and this is a point to tell you, by the way, that questions and answers and comments can go into your live question and answers, which you have there on your platform. So please feel free to do that. There's also private chat. And I would strongly advise you to put in your comments. The more cynical, the better. Those of you who think I am insane and what on earth am I talking about at Validation Week, please say that, but say why you think it's insane. Those of you who see the vision, but your companies aren't there yet, share that anonymously. You don't have to tell the names of your companies. And we will have questions and answers at the end of the session. We will have time for that. And I would really be very happy if we could get some discussion going about A, those of you who have already started down this journey, and B, those of you who see it as something impossible in such a highly regulated industry. But I will also point out to you that last week, at the very last moment, my husband, who's retired, was going to visit the children and grandchildren. And I said, I'm coming with. And it's a long trip. They live up north. And I was in the car And while I was in the car, a client had asked me for a proposal, which was rather urgent for them. And I said to them, well, I can't do it until tomorrow because I'm not at my desk. And then I did it on my phone. So that was disruptive thinking, because it was the first time in my life that I ever prepared a proposal for a work project on my phone. Why could I do that? Because I switched to an electronic platform for managing my entire business, which, by the way, because people tell me always the costs are prohibitive. The costs are not prohibitive. It is remarkably reasonable. I pay a very, very modest fee. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's something around $200 a year to use that platform. And it does all my tax invoicing. It does my pro forma invoicing. It manages my client. It does everything for me. And the switch, which I was scared of, I don't say I wasn't. I did a couple of years back, about 2 or 3 years back, and most people did it much earlier in Israel. But when I made the switch, it took me 2 hours. I'm not joking. It was to go onto the platform, to set it up, and then to issue invoices. That's how long it took. It was a very short learning curve. It was more a mindset. So you could prepare a proposal and you could issue an invoice in your Tesla, and you can manage your processes from your Tesla. This is definitely something that is possible. The next slide, please. So we're not talking futuristic. What you see here are drones. And when you see those drones, on the right-hand side, you will see a pilot scheme that Merck is running to deliver pharmaceuticals to remote locations. And on the left-hand side, COVID, Ghana, drone delivery of vaccine doses, speeds up COVID-19 vaccinations in remote areas. And there it is. So if they can do it, why can't we deliver samples from the production line to the QC laboratory by drones without human interference? They won't get lost because drones don't get lost. And they will be checked in by robotics. So there's no gaming the system. The robotics just take what is available, and it's imprinted into the electronic laboratory notebook. How many of you have electronic laboratory notebooks? If anybody who is listening has an electronic laboratory notebook in their company for QC testing, I'm not even talking about R&D, because very few of you have it even for R&D, for research and development, but I'm talking about QC, GMP compliant. Why not? Why don't we have them? We have to start tearing our hair out about this. Next slide, please. So here are the warning letters and the observations: manipulation of bioburden samples, misrepresentation of data in batch record, and backdating. Can we do this in paperless automated systems? Maybe if somebody is a hacker, a computer hacker, they can get into a system and they can do that. But if we have a full audit trail and we audit the audit trail, and if we put checks and balances onto those systems, we are making it much, much harder than in a paper system, or a system where we do or don't log the sample into the laboratory incubator. Next slide, please. So our industry is a bit chutzpahdik. Chutzpah, for those of you who aren't American, is a bit cheeky. Why? Because we talk about Pharma 4.0. But Industry 4.0 has been around for years. Why would we call it Pharma 4.0? It's about the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things. Do you have a semi-autonomous car? Does it have a mobile eye that beeps if you go over into the next lane? Does it pull you back if you're on cruise control? Do you have a smart home? Look, we can see it over here. Someone's holding their mobile phone and they're setting the settings on the refrigerator or turning the oven on. None of this is dream world. This is an iRobot. We have an iRobot in our home. And the first time, we haven't had it for very long, but some of my friends have had them for years. The first time it went around, it was surreal. And yet, all we have to do is touch a button on our phone, and there it goes. So how many of you can say, we've implemented Industry 4.0 solutions using this the Internet of Things. How many of you know what it is and can write a brief description about it? Well, maybe you can now because I've been talking about it for a while, and maybe you heard about it yesterday. And how many of you have never heard the term Industry 4.0 or even Pharma 4.0 at all? Have never even heard it. So, but you've heard of Amazon, and you've heard of Facebook, and you've heard of Tesla, and you've got smartphones. Next slide, please. So again, I'm very anti-pharma setting up their own 4.0. This is already here, and we need to learn from the other industries, and we need to implement. But we don't need to set up our own pharmaceutical. It's the same thing with the quality system. We don't need a pharmaceutical quality system. We need a quality management system, and we need Industry 4.0, which is the convergence of people, physical systems, and data within an industrial process, and that will increase, well, it won't increase quality, it will make us achieve quality, productivity, and profit using the power of advanced data analytics. And I'll ask the next slide, please. And while that's happening, I will tell you that those of you who don't adopt it are going to find the companies that don't adopt it will not be relevant another 5 years down the line, just as most car companies, Tesla is now a $1 trillion company and has overtaken Toyota, for example, by, I don't know, but orders of magnitude. So the companies that stagnate will become irrelevant. And it's about adopting digital strategies in the context of pharmaceutical manufacturing, a digitally mature industry, which we are not. It's more connectivity, productivity, simplified compliance, because we use data, information, and knowledge to prevent problems from occurring. Next slide, please. We're not very good at prevention in our industry. We're very good at reacting. And again, think about where you are. You're probably at, what is Karen droning on about, rather than using the drones? And of course, this is the pharmaceutical industry. Next slide. And that's just for you to see the industry of things, all the different things that could be in there. A lot of those things are, or not a lot of them, everything is in your company, because anything that has a 4 to 20 ampere input, an electrical signal, can be connected to this Industry 4.0, to the Internet of Things. We could give our employees, I'll take the next slide in the meantime, a smart device instead of a magnetic key card. Yeah, keep going, because you're going to get a lot of, machine learning and artificial intelligence and wireless sensors and robots like my iRobot and smart devices, not phones. They could be phones, but not necessarily. And before I talk about artificial intelligence, I'll share my vision, which is that we will give employees a smart device. When you come in the morning, instead of running a magnetic key card through to say that you've arrived at the facility, you pick up your smart device, just like you would pick up your phone, as we do when we wake up in the morning. And you will then activate it by a biometric signal. Therefore, there will no longer be this business of data integrity where someone runs someone else's card through the system because their mate says to them, look, I'm going to be late, but I don't want my time docked. Just run it through. No one's going to know. It's a victimless crime. And again, it's opportunity, which you don't have if each person has a biometric device with everything loaded up for them specifically. It has their job description on it. It has their training matrix on it, their training documents, anything that they need to read. If there's an updated procedure or something like that pops up, maybe even with a small YouTube video. After they have passed a small exam, then they are competent, and only then can they proceed to perform that particular procedure. So everything is controlled through this. We save an awful lot of heartache. When it comes to an inspection, you get better outcomes. This is what people don't understand. They think that the inspection will be harder because of the computerized aspects. You need to have those under control. But once they are, it's much easier. So artificial intelligence, machine learning, it's a self-driving car. Machines learn and they self-correct. Some of you already have cars like this. Certainly, I got rid of my car. My car was an slightly older model, and it had a mobile eye. So if I was drifting into the next lane, it would beep. And if I was on cruise control and I was too close to the car in front of me or someone cut in, it would beep. But my husband's car, which is a newer model, if he's on cruise control and someone cuts in and they're too close to him, it brakes. It brakes so that you can't crash. Next slide, please. You, again, must put this onto your laboratories, your manufacturing processes, anything with electrical signal, and think about how can we get it to take advantage of data, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. So these are just some slides from ISP. We can run through them very quickly, please. This one and the next slide. The next, sorry, go back, please. If we can go back 2 slides. Yeah, and the next slide along. Went through 2 foot. Now, and the next one. No, come forward. Oh dear. Here we are. I don't like not doing this myself, but you're doing a great job. One more back, please. One more back. No, 2 more forward. Oh dear. There we go. Okay, data integrity. Here we have a data integrity warning letter, and during the inspection, the certificate of analysis stored on the computer were approved by the quality unit. A manager demonstrated for our investigator how results on an already finalized COA could be, they wrote, manipulated. I would say changed after the formal quality unit approval. Also, the quality unit's electronic signatures were uncontrolled images of signatures rather than certificate-based electronic signatures. And the company says, well, we're going to put in an ERP system, an enterprise resource planning system, but you didn't tell us, this is the regulator, FDA in this case, how this system will prevent unauthorized access or data manipulation. And as long as there is human intervention, direct human intervention, indeed, we will stay with those integrity problems. Next slide, please. Oh, I better move along here. Time is running out. Here's another example of a deficiency with retesting. And again, barcoded samples automatically put into the electronic laboratory notebook. We're going to be okay. Next slide. And the next slide, please. We don't really need to talk about this. We all know that we want to be able to reconstruct activities. Data integrity, these words were said at a validation week session a couple of years back by an experienced process quality engineer, that with data integrity and dealing with the data, we're collecting so much data through the years and we don't have the tools to analyze it. Well, it's very strange because, of course, the huge e-commerce companies can analyze data within a second, microseconds. They push us adverts based on what we're looking at. So if I'm buying a ticket to England, they're going to push me London theatres. Next slide, please. The real barriers, small data and compartmentalization and lack of appropriate skill sets. We have to start recruiting interns, high school kids, preschoolers would probably be even better. And we need to look for geeks. We need the next Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Kira Rudinsky. Next slide, please. Elon Musk recruits via YouTube. Next slide, please. It looks like he's giving a presentation to shareholders. He's not. And Target sent vouchers for maternity clothes to a 16-year-old girl. They knew through their algorithms that she was pregnant. Her father was livid. 2 months later, he apologized to Target. They knew before the girl knew that she was pregnant by analyzing her patterns of use of her smart device. Next slide, please. So we're not very disruptive as an industry. We have lots of buzzwords, but Deliveroo and Amazon and Alibaba, they are all way ahead of us with our manual product quality reviews and storing stability data separate from QC release data and separate from process and machine performance data. Next slide. Here's a couple more deficiencies. A laboratory incident report for an unknown impurity was resampled. If we used a blockchain technology, we could prevent it. Next slide. What have we got here? Sample receipt logbook was completed when a test was completed when the test request was received and not when the sample was received, which could happen several days later. Well, if we had drones delivering our samples and electronic laboratory notebooks and barcoded samples, robots, it wouldn't happen. Next slide. Next slide, please. We talked about dark data. Well, not dark data, but just a description of big data. Next slide. And big data analytics, which we use to uncover critical pieces of information, which at present, our company does not have. Next slide, please, because we don't do big data analytics. Industry 3.0 is using computers. Industry 4.0 is using the data. And there is no point in having the data if we're going to just keep on doing what we have been doing. I heard Garda talking in the introduction this morning about a contamination control strategy that someone's going to be presenting on that for Annex 1, the revised Annex 1. You'll see on the final slide and also on this slide, anything in red, anything highlighted are signals, data, big data, which we could use to build a contamination control digitized strategy where we'd get all the information on real time and we would be able to have machine learning and artificial intelligence to warn us very early on before it happens predictively when our facilities are aging, when our equipment is aging, when we need to take preventive actions. Next slide, please. So if we still use Excel spreadsheets and if we still spend days and weeks, sometimes more than a month, on conducting investigations and have a list of 20 or more GMP computerized systems, each one a silo, and if we go through paper for hours on end and feed data manually into systems for analysis, that isn't big data. Next slide. And how many passwords instead of a biometric identifier? Next slide. So we're at the point, unfortunately, of digital immaturity with manual logbooks, with various different silo type computerized systems. Next slide. Digital maturity means it's all connected so that we get to an ICHQ 10 type vision of knowledge management. That never materialized in our industry, whereas the e-commerce has it. Next slide. And next one, please. We're going to skip through these. Next slide. And the next one. And the next one. Okay, so Industry 4.0 is about machines augmented with web connectivity and connected to a system that can visualize the entire production change and make decisions on its own. Yes, I put it in red. Next slide, please. The reason I put it in red is because we have fears about it. That's not a reason not to do it. Think GPS, think Waze, for those of you who are familiar with it, which is a GPS system you can download for free, where people report in when they see something on the road. It's quite dangerous, but nevertheless, imagine us, instead of a traffic jam, reporting a deviation from your company issue biometric employee handheld device. Let's skip to the next slide, please. And the next one, that's just about the Internet of Things and big data. And again, the next one. The importance of big data is in using it. Next slide. And the next one, please. Structured and unstructured data, blockchain. Next slide, please. A growing list of records. And why aren't we paperless? Why are we not paperless? We have to ask these questions. Next slide, please. The electronic pharma facility of the future. I have highlighted, sorry about that, from FDA's draft guidance on quality considerations for continuous manufacturing, a couple of points which connect to real system integration, data processing, and data management. Next slide, please. In the future, we'll have inputs, we'll have outputs, we'll have our smart device. The device interacts with the Internet of Things items throughout the workday, including controlled documents and training coordination, performance and documentation. Next slide. We won't get this kind of warning letter or of a Spanish company who were in the UDRA GMDP website. They had their GMP certificate yanked. Why? Because someone passed someone else's, the site technicals director, wasn't replaced when she was on sick leave. Staffers had forged her signature while she was out. Can't do that. There's no opportunity with a smart device that works on facial recognition or another biometric measure. Next slide, please. And I'm close to the end now. We want deviations reporting via the smart device. We want everything in there. Next slide. We want to change the user requirement specification. Validation is about the output. If you don't have a vision now for an integrated Internet of Things connectivity, big data analysis, collection analysis, and apps, designing computerized systems to integrate, then, and to achieve ultimately validation as a paperless exercise done on the app, data collected automatically because the protocol is part of the user requirement specification. Data is analyzed and reports are automatically generated. That does not have to be any kind of a dream. It should be easily achievable. But if we don't have a vision now, then 2025 is fast on us. We're almost at 2022. Next slide, please. Lots of cautions and lots of fears, and we need to be careful. Next slide. But that's not a reason not to do it. Next slide, please. And you've got to have a data governance policy. You've got to have complete, consistent, accurate record throughout the data life cycle. Next slide. And the next one, please. And the next one. And the next one. We will remove subjectivity. We will get rid of silos. We will have paperless, Internet of Things, smart, and we'll have robots, which are smart. And the next slide, please. And this is the slide that I mentioned earlier, where for a contamination control strategy, some of the inputs that we would want to go into that overall big data analysis and to collect the data and to analyze the data and to have algorithms running like Target did to identify when someone is pregnant before they know they're pregnant, to know when there are bugs and a contamination event is building up before we have to stop manufacturing, so we can choose when to deal with it. And the next slide. It shouldn't be a dream. If you don't have a vision, you're going to be irrelevant before 2030. That's sad, but I believe that. So thank you for participating. And we can move now to live questions and answers. We've got about 4 minutes left. So I'm very happy to take any questions if you want to put those in. Elise, I think you're going to come up and give me those.
Yes, great. Well, thank you so much, Karen, for your presentation. We actually still have about 15 minutes left of the session, so enough time to walk through some questions, which is great. So the chat box has quite a few comments. I am going to copy them here for you to read, Karen, and perhaps I've added into the box here so you can see, but I can read out a couple comments from folks. They've said, this is an excellent topic. Technology is long waited for the life science industry to be adopted. Some points about access management. So yeah, maybe if you can read through some of that, Karen, and address some of your thoughts, that might be helpful.
Yes, sure. It's, oh, wait a minute. I had to turn this off because I couldn't hear you before. Never mind. This is an excellent topic. It is an excellent topic. I think it's an interesting topic. Technology is long waiting, as you said, for life science industry to be adopted. Access management, complete immutable audit trail needs to be turned on, of course. Digital signatures, these things have been around for years. And I must tell you, I live in Israel and we're very advanced on these things. A lot of the technologies came out of Israel. And I sold my car, I think I mentioned that earlier on, when I sold it a couple of weeks ago. It took, I'll tell you the truth, it took me about 40 minutes to complete the transaction from my office. And the reason it took 40 minutes was because 30 of those minutes were spent on trying to set up my password for the relevant government office who, the licensing, what's it called, DV, the Department of Vehicle, whatever. But once that was set up, I input my information, I input the seller's information, then I was told by the computer, notify the seller. The seller went in and accessed their side, and within 10 minutes, that transaction was completed. So as an industry, we really are quite behind the times with these things. And that's because I have a digital signature set up across all government offices in Israel. So backup and restore, and all these are well answered, can be completed, proved with more than adequate. Huge opportunity to cut time and bring safe drug and therapies to patients. So yeah, do we have beyond that any questions? I see that it's near the audit trail using technology, especially on cloud with all the best practices. I agree with that. I totally agree with that. I think it's very difficult to tamper the audit trail. And the only thing that companies need to check regularly is that the audit trail is not inactivated and that people are using unique usernames. But I agree. The electronic systems are much harder to game. Process controls can provide near real-time detection and corrective actions. Absolutely.
Hi, Karen. There's another comment that's come in that says, I love the session and the way Karen has set up the tone. Pretty bold. Congratulations statement, and change is the law of life. And those who look only to the past or the present are certain to miss the future. So that's a great comment from someone. Wanted to share that with you as well. And we have another question that has come in. The question is, what is the biggest fear and reason for not adopting to Industry 4.0?
So I think that the biggest fear is the regulator. And I think that the fear of the regulator is overblown, but I do understand it. However, I can tell you, it's the bar for validation of these systems seems to be unbearably high. And so people just shy away from it and they stay with the paper. Counterintuitively, the opposite of what you might think, fully automated, digitized, computerized systems fare much better in regulatory inspections than any equivalent paper-based system. So I strongly recommend you to take it back and to get your companies to adopt Industry 4.0, at least to have a vision. Have a vision.
Great, thank you. So the next question I'll ask is, forgive the blunt question. It's easy for a consultant to say, do it, but within a company and within an ultra-conservative industry, how do you get started? Can I have an impact?
Right, so it's easy for, you're right, it's easy for a consultant to see things and to express things which individuals may have to go about in a far more tactful manner. So first of all, be tactful. That's the first thing I'd advise you. And the second thing is, educate up, go up in your organizations, if necessary, bring in help, but try and get management at management reviews and at town hall meetings to come on board and to develop a vision. Without a vision, you can't start going about it because you must have a plan, you must have a roadmap, and you must start populating that. And for example, one thing that you can do is to have a company vision which says, from now, we will not purchase standalone equipment. Anything that cannot connect to the Internet of Things isn't going to be purchased. We're not going to approve it. So that's a way to start. And it's something that you can do. Educating, we can all do.
Great, thank you. The next question is, where would you start? With computerized systems, or with data, or with measurements, or with field devices, or is this the wrong way to go about it?
Well, about 3 hours ago, I would have said to start anywhere except for with the data itself. But while I was tweaking my presentation, with me it's not usually tweaking, it's usually actually writing it. As you know, you got the slides very late. I was also researching on the internet, and what I found was what I said in the presentation, which is, again, it's against what you might think. You must start with the data. In our industry, traditionally, we're so into user requirements, specifications, and design, and starting with the process. But we have been collecting in our industry real-time data for about 30 years, as long as I can remember. We really have, ever since computerized systems started, and we are hopeless at analyzing it. So we must start analyzing that data, and then as a result, as an outcome, we have to start designing apps. And we have to start talking about apps and not computerized systems. We must change our whole mindset. There's a lot of work to be done, in my opinion.
Great. The next question that's been asked is, what would be the validation strategy for AI and machine learning systems?
I suggest you ask Mark Zuckerberg, because Facebook uses AI and machine learning, or you can ask Amazon, or you can ask Target, or any of those companies. When I hear about validating these algorithms are self-validating. They are constantly being revised, and there are teams of people working on it. If we continue as an industry, the pharma, to look at these things in the context of what we've always done, then we are insane. That's what Albert Einstein said. It hasn't worked for us. We are at least 10 to 15 years behind the electronic commerce industries. So we must change something in our mindset. And that requires interaction between regulators and industry, and acceptance of the fact that these algorithms are self-validating. We can't have the bar where it currently is. It's much too high.
Great, thank you. The next question is it necessary or possible to validate a big data algorithm? Even if you don't think it's necessary, would a regulator agree in an inspection?
I think it's fair to say they wouldn't agree. I think it's quite fair to say that they probably would not agree. However, if that big data algorithm is working for you, and if your process is functioning better and better and better, which it will, look at Tesla. Do you think that Tesla have done process validation? Need I say more? So I think that we just maybe have to press on. These big data algorithms are not really analyzing primary data. They're analyzing secondary data. So I think, like in the days when there was a big pushback on computerized systems validation in the early days, and FDA actually came out and said that their inspectors did need to push back, to move back a bit and not have quite such robust demands, because companies stayed with paper, and that was the price that we paid for it. So I think what we need to do is bring these issues out into the open. I know that Stacey in IVT Network and her podcasts has done a lot to move that along, and I think it's holy work that she's doing there. It's really important.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Karen. We've had a lot of comments come in and a lot of questions. So I think we will wrap up the session now as we're just about out of time. But wanted to give you a few moments if you have any closing remarks or any notes you want to share with our attendees.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you very much for asking me to speak. As you know, I'm a bit passionate about it. It's a critical topic. It really is. I feel very strongly that as an industry, we have fallen so far behind. And I think that it's okay. I don't think we have to, do penance or look into the past. I think we need to look now into the present, at the present moment. What can we do? And my advice, and actually it's a request to anybody who's listening, is go back to your companies, please. If they haven't started out on the journey, raise the issue and point out that it must be on the table and you must have a vision really fast. And then start on the journey, map it out and just get going. Thank you so much.
Once again, we thank our guest, Karen Ginsbury, for thought-provoking points. I also want to give a big shout out to our producer, Ben Kitchen. Most importantly, thanks to you, our valued listeners. With your help, we saw tremendous growth in 2021. Please share this episode with your friends, colleagues, and online networks. And don't forget, your 5-star review in your podcast player of choice will really help us out. If you have topic requests or guest suggestions, we'd love to hear from you on that as well. And if you liked this training style episode, please visit www.shop.ivtnetwork.com/product for a complete list of available training videos, on-demand webinars, and industry tools. We'll be back again next week with another great interview. Until then, make it a great week.